This is the Reading with Rochelle podcast, where we explore history we never learned in school, but wish we had and should have. I'm Rochelle Chase, author of Creating the Black Utopia of Buxton, Iowa, and 8 other books and novellas, and a columnist. And this week's episode is a little bit different. I was invited to co-host an episode with John Busby on his show, The Culture Buzz. The Culture Buzz is Iowa's gateway to the arts, literature, culture, history, and entertainment, and features highly praised author and regional cultural interviews. We're both discussing the book, The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success, with the author, Dr. William A. Keyes. Dr. Keyes is the founder of the Institute for Responsible Citizenship, which he created 22 years ago, and which he states has supported some of the best and brightest African American male college students in the country. They've become Rhodes Scholars, Fulbright Scholars, PhDs, MDs, JDs, and most importantly, have continued to be the thoughtful, caring men they were in college. Listen in as we discuss his book, What Makes the Institute Unique, and the notable accomplishments of Dr. Keyes and some of the exceptional African American college students who have completed his program.
John Busby with the Culture Buzz, and you know that I purposely take a broad sweep of the cultural brush when it comes to my programming. Why? Because all elements of our world connect with each other. Yes, I may have a cornerstone in arts, culture, literature, etc., but if we're not talking about everyone, everything, and how it all connects, then we're not doing ourselves any favors. That's why when this opportunity to share my next guest with you came along, I did not hesitate one moment. In fact, I was very excited to share with you Dr. William Keyes, and that is Keyes if you want to start looking him up. He has written a new book, The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success. If you want to find out more, he has established an incredibly inspiring program. It's called the Institute for Responsible Citizenship. Go to www.theinstitute.net and you will find out more information. If you didn't have your pen handy when I said that, don't worry. I will mention that another time or two. I also will be bringing in a co-host, someone that I've had on my program several times just because of her exceptional commentary, insights, and perspectives, Rochelle Chase. She's an author and educator. 2 of her books, Creating the Black Utopia of Buxton and Lost Buxton. She also has done an incredible middle grade history fiction book, The Time I Was Susan Clark. I could go on, but I'm not going to because we want to talk to Dr. Keyes. I was drawn to your book, and the purpose for your book, really, it's an invitation for anyone and everyone to learn and explore more about your work, and more importantly, the people who are coming through your program and what they're doing. So I'm going to stop there because I don't want to go down a side trail. I want you, Dr. Keyes, to give us a chance to give us the overview of the Institute for Responsible Citizenship and your new book, The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success.
Thank you, John. I'm thrilled to be on your program today and to meet Rochelle. And I think we're going to have fun for the next few minutes. I know I'm going to have fun. Hopefully the 2 of you will also. If my wife or anybody who knows me were listening, they would say, yeah, you get to talk about yourself. So sure you're going to have fun. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. 22 years ago, I created the Institute because I was very frustrated at something that I was seeing in our society. And that is the one demographic of our society that is truly ignored is high achieving, exceptional African American men. They're ignored. And the answer I get to that all the time when I'm saying, why don't we help these young men is, we don't need to worry about them. They will be fine. And this is coming from well-meaning people. And I understand their thought process. They're thinking there's so many young people, especially you think about young African-American men who are having all kinds of challenges. And people say, why would I worry about this kid who's making straight A's and never getting into trouble when there are all these kids over here who could really benefit from my help? And I just thought that was tragic because there are so many talented young Black men who are working hard, ambitious to make a difference in the world. They, as we say, they wanted to be successful for reasons that are bigger than themselves, and they were simply being ignored. And these were young men who, if they were going to go where their abilities could take them, they were going to be in competition with people who are getting all kinds of support. And then we wonder why they're not achieving as much as we thought they could have. And so I wanted to bridge that gap. And so we have this program where we select only 12 young men every year, 12 of the best and brightest African-American male college students from colleges all over the country. We put them through a rigorous program. And the result of that is one is a member of the New York State Supreme Court. One's a top surgeon at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. One's a professor at Duke University. They're elected officials in places like Baltimore and Philadelphia, city council. One became the youngest school board president in the country. They're doing all these amazing things. They're entrepreneurs. They're working in businesses. They're doing all these amazing things. They're teaching children. They're pastors of great churches. And what we're proving is if you give really talented young men the support that they need, they can do some pretty daggone extraordinary things, but not just for themselves, but for the communities that they live in and even broader. So when I say 12 people, you think, oh, that's not so impactful. But the reality is, as I say to the surgeon, it's not just about helping you be successful. It's about the thousands of patients that you will treat over the course of your career and their families and all the people they will influence. So it's really pretty daggone huge. And John, I want to say one other quick thing about this.
Yes.
In 1910, W.E.B. Du Bois was trying to build a system of higher education for Negroes. And he would go to philanthropists to ask for support. And what did the philanthropists say? Du Bois, the kind of people who could take advantage of a higher education ought to be able to take care of themselves. And I read that and I pounded my desk and I thought, I'll be damned, I'm going through the same thing more than a century later. 2 generations after slavery, and philanthropists are saying they ought to be able to take care of themselves. That had to change, and that's why we're doing what we're doing at the Institute.
And it's magnificent work indeed. You mentioned 12 at a time. What it is, it's a logarithmic expansion of benefit that goes out into the world. Folks, the book to inspire you to consider this your gateway, your invitation to learn more, to support, to share, whatever, get the word out there, is The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success by Dr. William A. Keyes, Keyes, in case you start searching somewhere like on one of the online sites for his book. He is the founder of the Institute for Responsible Citizenship. And I encourage you, and Rochelle, I'm going to have you come in just a moment and give some of your wonderful thoughts. The website to go to is www.theinstitute.net. And I mention that specifically because as I was exploring that, there is a brilliant short video there. It's called The John White, John Black Parable. You need to look at that, listen to it, absorb it, and do what you can to understand how you can use that in your own future and championing of Dr. Keyes' works. And one thing before I pass it on to Rochelle, Dr. Keyes, is as I was reading your book, as I was learning more about you, I kept hearing this faint voice in the back of my head from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., judge a person not by the color of his skin, but by the content of his character. And I just got shivers seeing how that leap and connection happened. Rochelle, I know you're bursting with questions, and I really want to have you really kick off this conversation with Dr. Keyes, please.
Thank you for that. As you can see by all my stickies, I had a lot of things we won't be able to touch today. But I'm glad that you started off, Dr. Keys, with explaining why you chose the why it's the brightest. You talk about that a lot in your book, but why these are exceptional young Black men in your program. And the fact that you talk about not only that they don't get these connections that other people have, they have to do everything by themselves. And I think that was really key to getting people to really understand that this is a mixed group. So I encourage people to definitely focus on that too, because I think that weaves itself all throughout the trainings and the lessons and the things that you're trying to impart upon these men is that leg up that Black men and Black people don't get because they don't have that intergenerational help, so to speak. That thread does seem to underlie all the advantages, all the things that you're trying to give these men and have them work for, I should say, to succeed. Would you say that's correct?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, you read that exactly right. There are two facets of that. One is that the phrase that we hear all the time in our institute is that these young men want to be extraordinarily successful for reasons that are bigger than themselves. I say to them all the time, what makes you so special that you are worthy of all this investment that we're going to make in you? Nothing. It's about not about you, it's about all the other people whose lives that you're going to impact. And once they embrace that notion that the good Lord put them on this earth for a purpose, it's not very difficult for me to get them to work hard or to make the sacrifices or the decisions that they have to make to be extraordinarily successful. That's the thing. The other part of what you're talking about, which is something I love, is that the people during the admissions process will say, okay, John, if you were admitted into the Institute, what do you think the greatest benefit would be? And some people might say, well, I get a great internship. And some people might say, oh, I meet people like John Lewis and Colin Powell. Or some people might say all of these different things. But the ones who really get it are the ones who say, if I were admitted into the Institute, I would become part of a network of amazing people. And that's what would change my life. That's when we know they get it. And so I was doing a book talk last night, and I mentioned that I'm becoming lonely because in the early years, I used to get phone calls all the time from these guys calling. They need advice about this or they need help with that. And now my phone doesn't ring very much anymore. But the reality is, it's because of the program or what we tried to create is being fulfilled, that now they call each other. That now a member of the class of 2025 is probably going to call another Institute alumnus from the class of 2005 to say, okay, how would you handle this problem? What would you do about this? And while I'm a little lonely, I'm actually really thrilled at the fact that this network really has taken shape. But another part of it is that I challenge them that wherever they go and whatever they do, their job is to bust the doors down for all the young men coming along behind them. And they also take that on with a lot of pride. And so back in May, I went up to Harvard Law School to see our 13th, 14th, and 15th alums graduate from Harvard Law School. And I ask people all the time, why do we have 15 young men who graduated from Harvard Law School? And of course, it's a trick question. And the answer is because the first one did. 6 straight years, young men graduated from Yale Divinity School. Why did 6? And by the way, Yale was really upset when year number 7, the kid went to Emory instead of coming to Yale. But nonetheless, for 6 straight years, they went to Yale Divinity School. Why did 6 young men go? Because the first one did. So in that case, for example, that first young man, Elijah, went to Yale. He did extremely well. Chris called me the next year and had failed to submit an application before the deadline. And I called Yale and I said, how's Elijah? They said, we love Elijah. And I said, oh, you love Elijah? You're going to love Chris. Chris, who's Chris? And I told them about Chris. And they said, unfortunately, he missed the deadline. I said, I know that. I said, but I just got off the phone with him. His application is going to be on your desk when you arrive tomorrow morning, complete. And I guarantee you, if you will read this application, you will thank me, right? And so if he can do all of that in one day, we'll read his application. Of course, Chris gets in, they give him a full ride. And the following year, they call me and they say, okay, well, who do you have for us this year? Because Elijah took his job seriously, that he was going to go in and bust the doors down for all the other guys coming along behind him. And then Chris did the same thing, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. That's whether it's grad school, that's whether it's a job, wherever it is. Think about this. Whatever the biggest company in Des Moines, Iowa is, if one of our scholars, one of our alumni goes to work for that company, he knows that his job is to perform at the highest level so that folks at that company are going to come to him and say, who else do you know who's part of this network of yours who would want to come work here? That's what their job is. They embrace it, and it's a really beautiful thing. And so if we could get talented young Black men and women across this country who would view success not as just as they get a good job, but that they get a job and a whole lot of other people get good jobs as well. And not that they have those jobs, but that they then use those jobs as platforms to make a difference in the world. Oh my goodness, what a beautiful world it would be.
Yeah.
Dr. William Keyes is my guest today with co-host Rochelle Chase. His book is The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success. You can order the book through their website and also learn more about the Institute for Responsible Citizenship by going to www.theinstitute.net. And I encourage you to do so. I don't care if you're a retired farmer living in the nethermost regions of Iowa. This is important to you because what you've just been informed about is how we can make the overall talent and productivity of this country so much better by simply getting the best of the best in their places. And Dr. Keyes is, I've got a new all-star I'm going to set up a pedestal with you on top of it, Dr. Keyes, because what you're doing.
Oh, let's not do that. Let's not do that.
Okay, let's just say, I'll let your phone be silent because of the success of your network as it keeps expanding. Rochelle, I know you have another question or two that you're just busting to ask.
Rochelle, just before, I want to say something to what John just said about who this book could be beneficial for, because I think you're exactly right. So let's say you're the youth pastor at church, you're the scout leader, you're the head of the Jack and Jill group in your chapter in your town, whatever it is, you're a teacher, right? Whatever it is, you're a parent. I believe that the lessons that we share in the stories in this book can be beneficial to you. A lot of it, you might think, and Rochelle, I want to know what you think, but some of it might be counterintuitive, right? And so if I were a basketball coach and I had some youth basketball team and we won a championship, everybody would want to know, how did you do it? But I don't run a basketball team. I'm preparing people to be on the New York State Supreme Court. I'm preparing people to be surgeons at top hospital. I'm preparing people to be the leaders in this country who are going to make the greatest difference. Why wouldn't people want to know, okay, how are you doing that? And I think a lot of how we're doing it is that we're communicating these expectations and these values to them through the stories that we tell around the dinner table. I can't invite everybody to come sit at our dinner table with us, but actually through this book, that's pretty much what we're doing. So there are a whole lot of people I think can benefit from this. And John, you mentioned going to our website to order the book. They can go wherever they go to buy books, whether it's Barnes & Noble or wherever. I hope a lot of people will buy it. It helps the Institute. All the funds will benefit the Institute. But more importantly, I think it will help prepare. All right, I want to say one other thing. And Rochelle, then I promise I'm going to shut up. The subtitle of the book is Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success. And I really should say something about that, because after the book was published and I was sitting there and I've got this beautiful book and I thought, wow, look what I've done. I feel really good about myself. I realized that that subtitle is actually not accurate. I am not trying to prepare these young men to be successful. They're mamas and daddies. When they're third grade teachers and all kinds of people in their lives have helped them to become successful. My job is to prepare them to be difference makers. Just being successful is not enough for me. It's not enough. It's being difference makers that when they walk into a room or an organization or whatever it is, that room or that organization will never be the same because they walked into it. That's way more, way better than just being successful. And so hopefully, there are people who are listening to the Culture Buzz who have an interest in how do we help people really make a difference in the world? Just getting a job after you graduate from college. Everybody gets a job after you graduate from college. So that's not the goal. The goal is to figure out how is the world a different and better place because I lived on this earth for a period of time. That's what this is all about for me. All right, Rochelle, I promised I was going to shut up. I'll shut up now.
My comments and questions segue into what both you and John have just been talking about. First of all, the audience for the book. What also struck me is what is it my dad says? You can't help others until you help yourself. The things that are in this book are also practical for all of us, meaning when we're looking at what's going on in the country right now, the divisiveness, the not listening. You have a chapter about everybody taking offense, looking for reasons to tear people down, looking for that thing you did wrong so that you can just totally ignore anything else about that person.
No.
And you talk about how you shouldn't do that. That is not something that is admirable. You want to be good men. So the point I'm making is there are so many of these things in here that I found myself reflecting, oh my gosh, I need to do a better job of that. I need to do whatever. So I think people reading this book can also see it reflected back on themselves and look at what am I doing these things? Because this is the roadmap to what we should be doing to be a good person, to respect people, to listen to people. And so I think people personally will get things out of this book and then also be inspired to, like you said, take that also to youth and figuring out how can I help this program? How can I help youth? How can I implement some of the things that Dr. Keyes is doing with his work? So that was one thing I wanted to say. The second thing I wanted to say, talking about some of these things that you cover in the chapters that you're helping these young men to realize and to develop. You mentioned W.B. Du Bois. You have said things about expecting the best, expecting excellence. In your book, you talk about respect, using titles, showing people respect, by standing up when you're at a table. And it made me think of like my grandparents, my great grandparents. It made me think about, you talk about W.B. Du Bois in the top 10th and the role that that has. It made me think about, as I'm learning more about Black history, how in the past, these were some of the things that were done. We had high expectations. There was no excuse. You did these things. So I guess I'm asking is, of course, this has your take on it, but did these things also influence some of the things that you have, the principles and the guiding lessons that you have in this program?
If nothing else, I am an observer of human life, human interaction. I just have always observed people. I mean, who are successful people and what do successful people do? What are their characteristics? And one of the things I've noticed is that the people who seem to be most successful are people who people like. I ask the guys all the time, I say, okay, guys, I need to hire someone. And I've determined that anyone with a 3.5 GPA or better is intellectually capable of doing this job. And I'll point to one, I'll say, he has a 3.5 GPA. He has a 3.75 and he has a 4.0. Which one am I going to hire? And they all guess, and somebody will say, you're going to hire the 4.0. And I say, why? And they'll say, because he's the smartest. And then somebody else will say, you're going to hire the 3.5. And I'll say, why? They say, because he's probably more well-rounded. I said, okay, guys, listen, I just said the intellectual requirement is 3.5 GPA. So all of them fit that requirement. Which one you want to know which one I'm going to hire? And they go, yeah. And I go, the one I like. They all are capable of doing the job. I'm going to hire the one I like. And I'll point to the guy with the 4.0 and say, yeah, he's brilliant, but he's a jerk. I don't want to spend my time with him. Right. And I make this point to them and I laugh about it because nobody tells you that in school. Yeah, you can have the perfect transcript, never made anything less than an A+, but you're a jerk. You're still not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. There are a lot of smart people in the world. And so I'm saying to them, yeah, you got to be smart, But what are the other characteristics that are going to cause people to want to work with you or promote you or support you or whatever? And they come back to those very things, Rochelle, that you're talking about. When I walk into the room, do I treat other people with respect, or do I walk in like I'm some kind of a king? No. Why do they stand up? If we were sitting around a dinner table having a meal, Rochelle, and you or John walked into the room and said, "Hey, Bill, how you doing?" What would everyone do? I would stand up to greet you, and so would they. Why would they do that? Out of respect for you. I think one of the lines I use in the book is the easiest way to get respect is by giving respect. These young men, think about it, young Black men who want to be tough. They think that they're going to go out and demand respect from someone. You can't demand respect, right? You get respect by giving respect. That's a whole lot better. Think about this. They don't want to smile. They want to have these tough looks on their faces all the time. I joke about how I was walking down the street one time and I noticed everybody was smiling. And I thought, isn't this great? And then I realized everybody's smiling because they're smiling back at me, right? So in some ways, we can complain about the world that we live in, but we can also define the world that we live in. How do we treat other people? Maybe we treat them the way we would want to be treated, and then we get from them what we would like to get from them. And then everybody around us and everything around us changes. And we can think about that in really small things, and we can think about that, the big public policy areas where we're talking about who we elect to public office and all of that. I think all of that is influenced by how we conduct ourselves and how we treat other people.
Oh, folks, Dr. William Keyes, this is a conversation that could go on and on. I will show some restraint and we will wrap up the conversation now. What I will leave you with is this. You need to get his book, The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success. As he wrapped up with that last wonderful monologue, I can't think of a better way to punctuate just an absolutely rewarding, inspirational conversation than what Dr. Keyes just said. Rochelle Chase, you have added so much, as you always do, to any and all conversations. Your work is stellar. But folks, go to www.theinstitute.net. Learn more. The more you learn, the more you become informed, the better you will be situated to be a positive influencer and impactor here in this world of ours. And we need all of you that we can get. Dr. Keyes is a leader. He is a propagator of such people. And this is a trend that is just incredible. Rochelle, thank you. Dr. Keyes, thank you so very much. Again, folks, Dr. William Keyes, Keyes, the Institute for Responsible Citizenship. Go to www.theinstitute.net. And the book, The Stories They Hear, Expecting Greatness as the Key to Success. If you are any kind of an educator that loves to share inspiration, insight, and wonderful stories, this is your book. Get it. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, Rochelle.
Thank you.